To begin with that fast approaching deadline for the Supreme Court on the most common method of abortion in the U.S. Justices expected to issue a decision by midnight tonight on whether it will rule on access to the abortion pill mifepristone or let a lower court's ban take effect. This comes after a challenge to the FDA's approval of the drug in the federal court. Joining me now with the latest, ABC News senior Washington correspondent Devin Dwyer and president of the Constitutional Accountability Center, Elizabeth Wydra. Devin, let's start with you and just kind of remind us all how we even got to this point and just the different scenarios that we could see play out today.
Kira, this is a case about the most commonly used abortion method in this country, mifepristone. It's a drug that was approved 20 years ago. And last year, a group of anti-abortion doctors groups and other organizations challenged the FDA's approval of that drug. And they won a significant ruling in a district court in Texas 2 weeks ago. That judge invalidated approval nationwide of mifepristone. The Fifth Circuit heard that appeal, modified that order a little bit. And now we're at the Supreme Court, where the Biden administration is asking the justices to put those lower court rulings on hold. This is simply a temporary request asking the court to suspend those lower court orders while the appeals play out. And so we're waiting until about midnight tonight. Hopefully this afternoon, the justices will come down with some sort of a decision on whether these restrictions will take effect that this lower court ordered on mifepristone. What could the justices do? Well, they could grant the government's request and stay those rulings while these appeals play out. Simply, they could deny the request and allow the restrictions to take place. The government said that would be highly disruptive. It would harm women. It would snap back regulations around mifepristone to the year 2000, meaning women would need to go in person to their doctors to receive the drug, make 3 visits. They could only use the drug up to 7 weeks of pregnancy. They could not use generic versions of the drug. So a significant change if the stay is denied. The Supreme Court could also take some sort of middle ground, Kira, and then we're also waiting to see whether the justices will take up this case on the merits in an expedited basis. Will they hold an argument and actually debate this in the courtroom as soon as next month? That would bypass this appeals court process, really get the justices into the thick of it. Remains to be seen what they'll do, but hopefully we'll find out in a few hours.
All right. Well, we're obviously waiting minute by minute here to get this decision. And Elizabeth, if mifepristone is taken off the market, you say it will cause a lot of chaos and confusion. How and why?
Absolutely. So, as you mentioned, this is the choice for more than half of Americans who terminate pregnancies. It's also used in miscarriage care. And so taking mifepristone off the market nationwide would both deepen and widen the abortion access crisis that has really started with the Supreme Court's overruling of Roe versus Wade last year in the Dobbs case. Because this would mean that not only would mifepristone, medication abortion through that manner, not be available in states that are already acting to further restrict abortion rights, but it wouldn't be available in states that have actually sought to protect abortion rights after the fall of Roe. This would be a nationwide ruling that would take mifepristone off the market for the entire country. So we'd see people in states where they have had their elected leaders act to make abortion more accessible suddenly have this most common form of abortion taken away from them. And that would have serious consequences in terms of access. There's also huge implications for the pharmaceutical market. If you can withdraw FDA approval from a single judge that applies nationwide to a drug 20 years after it's been approved with a decades-long safety and efficacy record like mifepristone, then other medications that Americans need and want could be at serious risk if that confidence in the FDA approval system is undermined in this way.
So, Elizabeth, what kind of precedent do you think this could set?
Oh, I think the precedent is something that obviously Americans who care deeply about making their own reproductive choices are extremely worried about. It's also a precedent that people who care about a properly functioning public health and drug market care about, because if you throw into chaos the FDA approval process and make it based more on political or partisan agenda rather than science-based evidence, that has far-reaching implications. So, the chaos and confusion here are not just for individuals who want to make sure that they get to make their own choices themselves about their lives and their reproductive choices, but also for, the economy as a whole and people who depend on medication, who want FDA approval to be something that's based on safety and not politics.
And Devin, you've been so good at just keeping up with both sides on this case. What's the latest feelings today as the deadline is looming?
Well, picking up on Elizabeth's point, Kira, the administration told me this morning they are very concerned about the precedent this sets for the entire drug approval system in this country. Never before this case has a court in this country overruled or questioned, second-guessed FDA's approval of a drug. Let that sink in. Never before has a judge actually said the science that the agency relied on in approving something for market, governing how it's used, was flawed. And that's what's happening here. And so the administration is very concerned about what this could mean for all sorts of cases and drugs, opening the floodgates, if you will, for any sort of questioning of the agency's science and their process. This is very much a process case. It's about how the agency vetted the drugs. That's the biggest concern on the government side. Of course, these groups that are challenging mifepristone, Kira, are very encouraged by what they've seen in the lower courts, and they hope the justices, this conservative majority, will let those new restrictions take effect.
All right. Devin, Elizabeth, thank you both so much.